CEO. I've been here 10 months, so I'm fairly new and still learning the ropes, but excited about what I'm learning. GraceWorks is a faith-based community resource center. We have offices right here in Franklin, off Columbia by the Chick-fil-A, yay! And in Fairview. So two offices. Our mission is to serve the residents of Williamson County by offering short and long-term resources to help our neighbors, as we call those who come to us, in their time of need. Our services can best be described under the acronym of FISH. I wish I had been cool enough to come up with that. It was not I, it was my staff, and I'm excited. But the acronym FISH, family support, instructional programs, seasonal needs, hunger prevention. Those are our 4 primary programs. I'll tell you just a little bit about the services that fall under those programs. Under family support, we help with rent payments and payments for utilities, newborn supplies, medical support, senior adult needs, clothing and home good needs, and homelessness. That's all under family support. The next program that we have is instructional programs. And please know that in many of the things we do partner with other nonprofits in our community. It does take all of us. It takes a village of nonprofits really to serve the needs of our community, and we're happy to talk about those liaisons that we have with other very, very important nonprofits. So financial guidance, family guidance, nutritional education is what falls under our services that fall under our instructional programs. Moving on down the FISH to the S, seasonal needs. Man, I tell you, in the end of the year is where we really do see a lot of our services for our seasonal needs. We just recently finished a big backpack giveaway. Say that about 25 times after we've had cheese and crackers. Anyway, the big backpack giveaway was a community effort. It was a combination of a number of nonprofits, including United Way, coming together, and we gave away over 2,300 backpacks to low-income families in our community, and we continue to give those school supplies away. We had a big school supply drive along with the backpacks, so it wasn't just backpacks, they were stuffed with school supplies. And when we looked at the overflow of school supplies, we called our school counselors and asked, can we give you these supplies to stuff your closets? Because maybe some families didn't make it to the big backpack giveaway. And we know come January, many of those supplies have been depleted, and we do want our kids to be equipped, to be educated well, right? That's important. So seasonal needs, big backpack giveaway. Another big event that we do is the Manger. And that's where we invite low-income families to have a shopping experience. We do a toy drive and a gift drive. I'm going to separate toy and gift drive because toys for kids, but we want everybody to have gifts. So gifts for teen boys, gifts for adults. So that's our Manger. Last year we served about 3,300 people through our Manger. Holiday food boxes, air conditioners, heaters, tax preparation. We partner with VITA, and anyone who makes $64,000 or under can come to GraceWorks and have their taxes done during tax season. And the last of the FISH, the H, is hunger prevention, and that's what we're here to talk about today. It is a large part of our programming. 47% of our programming goes to hunger prevention. And so, of course, that includes our food bank. It includes our fuel bank program. I'll talk more about that. And our mobile food pantries, where we take the whole show on the road and go and serve families who either are on the outskirts of Williamson County or are in communities where transportation might be a problem. So that's GraceWorks in a nutshell. I'd love to talk more about GraceWorks, but I was asked to talk about hunger, and I need to be sensitive to time as well. Parents, imagine your kid coming to you saying, "Mom, I'm hungry. Dad, I need something to eat." Now think about the pit in your stomach if you were that parent who knows you don't have food in the house to satisfy that request. That happens right here in Williamson County, in a county where the median income is $96,000. I'm learning, being new to Williamson County, that many think, boy, you live in Williamson County, you got it made in the shade. My work at Graceworks tells me differently. Of course, in Williamson County, we don't see the type of starvation that we see in second and third world countries, right? We all remember pictures from the droughts and pictures of skeletal kids starving with flies buzzing around their eyes. I recently wrote for our newspaper article. For me, it makes it a little worse because it's less obvious. Right, Dad? We could be sitting right next to someone who is hungry. Our kids could be sitting next to someone at school. We could have a coworker in the other cube who's not eating lunch, and we're thinking, "Oh, she just wants to be skinny. She's hungry." Right? And distracted at work, thinking, "Man, I don't have food tonight for my family. I'm not able to fix dinner." Hunger exists in Williamson County. Our hungry are defined as food insecure. And food insecure people are said to be in the state of being without a reliable access to a sufficient quantity of affordable, nutritious food. Right? We're not starving, like, to the point of death for the most part, but we're food insecure here in Williamson County. Food is all around us. I live in Cool Springs. I moved here, I was like, whoa, let's see, I got all these different places to eat. It's amazing to me, the number of restaurants, right? And grocery stores aplenty. The problem is not everybody has access to them. Mostly it's a financial lack of access. It's transportational lack of access as well. And so when we think about hunger, there are both physical and psychological effects of being hungry. The physical ones are obvious, right? Our body needs food to fuel it, to function. God designed us that way. Without food, we just shut down. The psychological ones are real as well and becoming more acknowledged through funny commercials like the Snicker commercial, right? You're not yourself when you're hungry. And we kind of laugh, I get a Snickers. There are people who are hungry and they are not themselves. People who are hungry have trouble thinking. Children who are hungry have trouble learning. People who are hungry take foolish risks. You look at crime, and why did they do that? They don't want to be hungry. They need some money. They want to eat. Why did she steal? She's hungry. Take foolish risks. People who are hungry often can consider little else but their hunger. They get consumed by it. They can't consider others. There is a syndrome called HALT, and HALT is an acronym for hungry, angry, alone, and tired. I was sad to consider all of the labels in this acronym, but the one that made me sad is lonely. I imagine that's so true in Williamson County, right? That the hungry are lonely. Imagine being in this place of plenty and not being able to join in. Right? People are going out to dinner and people are at the grocery store grabbing all kinds of stuff and you're there, let's see, I got $10, so let's see what I can do with this. Looking over at the person in line next to you and their cart is full. That acronym of HALT makes sense to me. Hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. Nearly 10% of people in Williamson County are food insecure, and while 10% might not sound like a lot, I hold 80% is unacceptable. But 10% represents about 21,000 people right here in Williamson County. Too many of them are children. More than 5,000 Williamson County students are participating in the free or reduced lunch program. Children may be determined as categorically eligible for the free lunch program through participation in certain federal assistance programs such as SNAP, or based on their homeless, migrant, runaway, or foster child status. Children enrolled in the federally funded Head Start programs or the comparable state-funded pre-kindergarten programs are categorically eligible for these free meals. Children can also qualify for free or reduced school meals based on household income and family size. Families with incomes at or below, man, look at this percent, 130% of the federal poverty level are eligible for these free meals. Those children who fall in that category, schools may not charge them more than 40 cents for a reduced meal. I looked at some income guidelines. Just thought it'd be interesting to look at as they talk about that 130% under the federal poverty level. So a family of one, it's $22,000 annually. A family of two, it's $30,000. A family of three, it's $37,000. I'm rounding. A family of four, $45,000. A family of five, $53,000. You get the picture. The picture I really hope you get is that we're talking about 5,000 students in Williamson County on free and reduced lunch programs. What happens to these kids over the weekend when they don't have access to free or reduced lunch? I know what happens to them. They go hungry. Saturday and Sunday. They go hungry. Then they come to school that following Monday, showing the effects of not having had enough food over the weekend. They're tired, they're lethargic, they're irritable, they are unable to learn. They are halt, right? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. I want to digress a little bit and talk about a conversation that I had with, I met with the superintendents of the Franklin Special Schools and the superintendent of the Williamson County Not So Special Schools, as I tend to call them, being a transplant, like one special and one not so special. But the thing that I was told,
They're not special.
right? I asked them, are we able to reach all these kids? And they said, no, we're probably not even reaching all the kids with free and reduced lunch, because parents will say, don't go to school telling people our business. Don't go to school making people think I'm not taking care of you. Don't put me at risk for DCFS knocking on my door. When I heard that, I realized we're not even identifying all the kids. So they're little babies sitting in school, keeping their mouths shut, and hungry. I could stop talking and sit and weep. Nobody in Williamson County should be hungry, especially not our children. Lucky for us, we have caring teachers. They noticed what's wrong with these little babies. And having little private conversations, they confess they're hungry. Those teachers came to GraceWorks and said, help us feed these children. And so what we came up with was a fuel bag program. It is light meals and snacks that we send home with those children over the weekend. That program is thriving in the elementary schools because the teachers have access to their backpacks. So on Fridays, they take those little meals and snacks and put them in the backpacks. Harder in junior high, close to non-existent in high school. As I was talking with these superintendents, they were saying part of it becomes stigma. That the high schoolers have a greater awareness of self and family, where the little babies, they take their little food, they're happy to have it. And the high schoolers don't want people to know. They don't have to have the mom tell them. They don't want people to know. But also, we were told for high schoolers, they're not going to come home with a bag of light meals and snacks for themselves, knowing they have brothers and sisters who don't have that. They're not going to do it. We have work to do. We have work to do. There should not be a hungry person in Williamson County. Anyway, I could get on a soapbox. I'm not going to do that. So, these fuel bags, I'm excited to report to you that GraceWorks distributes over 23,000 of these fuel bags throughout the school year. And the conversations with the superintendents have pricked my ear on how we can do more. And that, they help me think about what we can do during the breaks. I didn't realize there's a fall break. It's my first fall in the Nashville area, thinking about spring break. And so we got to get our heads around that. 47% of the programming of GraceWorks addresses hunger. We do that through our food pantry, through the student fuel bags, and over here I have just an example of some of the things that might be included in the student fuel bags, and also through our mobile food pantries, and of course through our holiday food basket giveaways. I believe one contribution to hunger in Williamson County is the cost of housing. I recently learned that our rent or mortgage here can be as much as 70% over fair market value. It takes more than 2 full-time minimum wage jobs, which would bring you to about $16.35 an hour, to afford a normal 2-bedroom apartment. They rent at about $850. In Williamson County, a 2-bedroom rental can be as much as $1,600 a month. Where's that money coming from when you are working at or slightly above minimum wage? And if you do manage to grind out enough for your rent, how do you buy food? So many of the people we see at Graceworks are those working poor. It's not people who don't care, who are not doing anything. Some are working multiple jobs, trying to grind it out. Struggling to make ends meet. Some are left with the hard choices. Do I feed my family or do I keep a roof over my head? The fact that there are no homeless shelters in Williamson County makes it crucial for people to keep their homes. Right? There's not a lot of help for homelessness here. In terms of us having formal programs to help homelessness. I mean, we have some, obviously, nonprofits that are doing their work, churches that are doing what they can, and we know about those, but really it needs to be a greater effort, and to me that takes just a greater awareness, but that's another soapbox I won't get on. So while some of the people we see at Graceworks are the working poor, some aren't, right? Some are homeless. Some are unemployed. Some are simply unable to work. Some are people who are surprised to find themselves there. We have all seen life turn on a dime in a direction we could not have anticipated. We've all seen that. Just the other day at Graceworks, we saw a middle-aged gentleman who lives alone. He has lung cancer so severe that even as he sat at our office, he was connected to his portable oxygen tank. The Medicare he receives is not enough to cover all his expenses. He came in for food so that he could take the little money that he does have to pay his rent. We were happy to give it to him. I was happy to personally meet him, and I have to tell you, when I was sitting next to him and I looked at him, and he's scruffy and a little bit stinky, and he told us that his bathroom is upstairs and he doesn't have the lung capacity to get up there anymore. God told me, nobody's touched him affectionately in a long time. And I reached out and just held his hand. I just sat holding his hand while we talked. I know that's not food. I think it's food for the soul, though. And so I'm just excited about the people that we get to serve at Graceworks. A mom of 5 came in needing help. She was homeless. Parents, please imagine being in your car in the Tennessee summer with 5 kids who are hungry and tired and dirty. It was our privilege to give her food. It was our great privilege to give her food, to feed those 5 kids. Unfortunately, we were able just to put a Band-Aid on her homelessness. We were able to give her some days in a local motel, if you will. Take a shower, get in the air, eat so you can think and make a plan. Right? How can you make a plan of what to do when you are stuffed in a car with 5 kids in the Tennessee heat? How do you sleep safely? You gotta have your windows down. You are prey to any bug or thief or derelict who would come along. She's halt. hungry, angry, lonely, and definitely tired. Definitely tired. We saw another woman who came in. She was newly divorced, and prior to her divorce, never dreamed that she would be unable to feed her kids. She was left with a bigger house than she could afford. She had not worked during her time in her marriage. You would look at her and not guess. She needed to come to GraceWorks and get some food. She was ashamed to have to come. It was our privilege to serve her and to love on her and to invite her. Don't be ashamed. That's why we're here. So people of all colors, ages, and walks of life living right here in our community come to GraceWorks. Last year, we gave away $1.6 million. Food valued at $1.6 million. Let me say that correctly on one tape. Food valued at $1.6 million. We receive food through food drives done by individuals, community groups, churches, schools, civic groups such as the Rotary Club. We also buy food at a deep discount from Second Harvest. In addition, we receive food donations from grocery stores like Publix, Kroger's, Sprouts, Whole Foods, and Walmart. I say their names intentionally. September is Hunger Action Month. How appropriate that I would be invited to come and talk about hunger in September. Thank you again, Kristen. For GraceWorks, every month is Hunger Action Month. We fight hunger 5 days a week through our special programs that I talked to you about, and on the weekends as well. As we address hunger today, I hope one of the things you come away with is an inspiration, really I want to say a determination, to take action against hunger. You are needed. Doesn't take much. Doesn't take much to address hunger. You could do a neighborhood food drive or contribute to them when you see them happening at the grocery stores. Oftentimes in the grocery stores you will see those food boxes and they say Second Harvest. They're coming to GraceWorks because we're a Second Harvest partner. So they will do food drives for us locally and we go pick it up. It comes to GraceWorks. So when you see those drives, participate. Or as I said, you can do your own with your church. The schools participate. Daryl Waltrip has rallied the schools that throughout the school year, every grade level has a season where they do food drives that comes to GraceWorks. Participate in that. We talked about the fuel bags. Those fuel bags cost us, GraceWorks, $10 each. I told you we gave away over 23,000. Doesn't take a math genius. That's $230,000 that we need to do those critically important fuel bags. Give your financial donations to help us be able to feed our children here in Williamson County. You could sponsor a mobile food pantry. It's $5,000. You could write a check for $5,000 and feed hundreds of families. We have anywhere from 150 to 300 families come to our mobile food pantries. We're excited. It's our privilege. to give them food. You could join us in doing that. Those are the ways that you could take action during September Hunger Action Month. I don't want to be insensitive. If you are on the other side of the equation, if you need food, come to GraceWorks. Let us give you food. We give away a cart full of food. You don't have to look over at the lady in the grocery store and you've got your little items that $10 can buy and she's got a cart full. We give away a grocery cart full of food. Come to GraceWorks. It would be our privilege to feed you and to love on you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valencia, and please don't ever get off your soapbox.
Oh,
We need more. Just stay on there, stay on there as much. We're gonna have a time of question and answers at the end. So if everyone can kind of write your question down, if you have questions that you might want to ask specifically to Valencia and to our next speaker, I just thought it would be easier if we consolidated it at the end. And,
Can I follow up first just for a moment?
Yes.
My name's J. Edward Campbell, and I'm running for Alderman in Ward 1. I want to thank you, first of all. I want to thank you for bringing me to tears.
Oh, Jay.
I knew when I met Valencia that God had sent an angel to Williamson. And Valencia, you are that angel, and GraceWorks is that angel. I'm running for office, and this is my first time out, so, do you knock on doors, do you put out signs, do you do whatever? I woke up this morning and I said to Brenda, we've got 6 things to do. What are we going to do? And I went back to the list of 6 things, and your thing was at the top, and I thought, am I going to go over there, and am I going to go over there, and am I do that, or, I'm going to make an appearance here, and make an appearance there. And it seemed like God told me I needed to come here. I'm not here to toot my own horn, but there are people in this room that know me. I get it. I get it about GraceWorks. I get it about hunger. I'm a realtor broker along with my wife. We get it about housing. I've been told a lot of things, and I know that the press is in the room, but I've been told a lot of things, and I'm here to tell you folks, this is where the rubber meets the road. I've lived here since 1976. I feel it an honor and a privilege to live in the city of Franklin.
Amen.
But I want you to know, Valencia, I was that little boy that grew up in Memphis. I was that little boy that I never felt like I went hungry. But I look back at what my parents did with their paycheck, and I don't know how they raised 5 kids. I was that little boy that my mother would go to the dollar store and buy me a shirt that had the label cut out because she could afford it there. And then kids at school would pull my shirt back and make fun of me because I didn't have name brand stuff. So I'm thankful to God that you're the angel and GraceWorks is the angel. Housing continues to be a big issue. I've been told more than once I will not be elected in this town if I go for affordable and workforce housing. But you know what? That's my message, and that's my mission.
Amen.
And you know what? We've got to do something. I served as chairman of the Housing Commission last year. I'm serving on the Housing Commission this year. We've got to do something about affordable workforce housing. I had a campaign event recently, and the guy who catered that event for us, through a friend of ours who held that event, the event was actually held just over the line in Brentwood at Ravenwood Mansion. He said to me, today there are 500, he owns the City Cafe in Brentwood, there are 500 food service jobs available today that we cannot fill because people cannot live in Williamson County and they can't fill those jobs. I'm going on record, I may get in trouble for this, but the Heritage in Brentwood, which is an upscale retirement home, their executive staff is working on tables because they can't get employees to work at the Heritage because they can't live in this county. what you just told us brought me to tears, but I have sat in city meetings and I have heard, we have enough affordable housing, and that's wrong. We don't have hunger, and that's wrong.
That's wrong.
And I mean, I know that these things exist. I mean, I know, I'm blessed to be a member of First Presbyterian Church. We do fuel bags, and we do things for Grace Works. But, you know, I want to just back up with what she said. I always go back to, and I'll be 65 next month, but I always go back to the song that I grew up as a child. Because I have been given much, I too must give. And don't ever think that your gift is too little or too small, because all those gifts make a difference. Brenda and I have something, and it's anonymous, and I still won't tell you what it is. I think Valencia knows what it is. But we do something at Christmas time for the community, and are allowed to do that anonymously, and have done it for a long time. And I mean, and there's so many things to do. This is a very caring and giving community. But also at the heart of the caring and the giving, I think there's needs like today that people, either we know them and we just kind of brush them aside. But you know, I mean, when I sat in the chair and you started in with the hunger thing, the tears started coming, because I've never known hunger. I mean, I don't think I've even known hunger because I wanted to be hungry. I mean, because I just didn't eat.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine a little child saying to a mom and dad.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
There's a reason why you're here.
Okay, so we have a second speaker today. Anna, I was going to have you pass out these handouts that our next speaker was going to. You're right here. So our welcome to everyone who has come in since I was up here. Our next speaker is Keith Barnes from the Tennessee Justice Center. Keith is an amazing advocate for freedom, security, and hunger in our state, and all that encompasses the struggle with poverty. Keith earned his undergraduate degree from NTSU and was a Peabody Honors Scholar at Vanderbilt University, earning his master's in community development and action. Keith began his career of service as an AmeriCorps Vista from the Penobscot Nation, serving their tribal leaders. He got hooked and served as his second year as a Vista leader for the Ohio Association of Food Banks, overseeing a team of nearly 20 Vistas across Ohio, working on a variety of anti-poverty grassroots projects. Upon returning home from graduate school, he worked for the grassroots food security nonprofit Community Food Advocates. And before joining the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability, a state agency focused on ensuring that other adults and persons with disabilities are able to maintain the highest possible quality of life and independence. Keith's past experiences and advocacy around the issues of hunger have been seeking solutions for Tennessee's very high rate of older adult hunger. He also administered a $13 million program that funded a statewide network of Meals on Wheels providers, making policy improvements that significantly improved quality of service and increased meals that were served by 10% without additional funding. Keith Barnes is a champion of mercy, and he works with the Tennessee Justice Center as a nutrition expert in dealing with food insecurity across the state of Tennessee. Keith is going to come and talk to us today about hunger across our state. And we've heard about our neighbors here in Williamson County, but there is a narrative of hunger across our entire state. And please welcome Keith Barnes from the Tennessee Justice Center. Thank you so much for coming.
Kristen, thank you so much for organizing this. There's like a whole lot of mercy in this room, right?
Yeah. Right? Yes.
So I couldn't think of a better place to be on a Saturday morning than in this room with all of you wonderful people who care. And so again, thank you, Kristen, for being the champion of mercy and light in Williamson County. So I know we're running a little short on time, so I'll kind of skip some things, and I'll come back later.
Don't skip anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just go for it? Okay. Well, to begin then, just a little background on the Tennessee Justice Center and what we do. So we have, existed for over 2 decades now. We stand with the poor in our state to make sure that they have access, the ability to meet the most basic needs in life. For about the last decade, we mainly focused in the healthcare space, making sure that people were able to get the medical care that they needed. I started back in January to bring us back into the nutrition space. Addressing hunger statewide. How do we do that? So we're actually a very unique organization in terms of the work that we do. So we do direct client work. We help people and have helped people directly who have challenges. Let's say they're trying to get 10 care services and they're having difficulty navigating that system. We help them directly. We also do things like this. We get up and talk in front of people and make them aware of the issues and what's going on and what all of you can do to make things work better. And then we kind of leverage all that and we go out and we do make things better. So we advocate for change. We want systems that work. We want government that works for people and is accountable to people. And then I guess I mentioned, I started in January, so this is fairly new work for us. My role is to protect and improve the publicly funded nutrition safety net programs in Tennessee. I'll go into a little more detail on what that means, but basically we've got a lot of needs in the state and we have public programs that can help address it and help make the load that organizations like GraceWorks face a little bit lighter. So that's kind of where I'm coming from today. But I thought I would start with a little audience participation. Kristen asked me to talk about poverty, and I thought, well, how do you, I thought it'd be fun to just help frame it up a little bit. So we're actually going to start with the internet. So who here pays bills online? Okay, who here has ever, renewed your tags or your driver's license online? It's kind of a newer thing, but getting a lot of hands. How about an online purchase? Great. Okay, so this will make sense in a minute. Here's another question. Who here has a credit card with a 459% interest rate? Okay. 36% interest rate? Maybe. Probably not. No, I don't think that's the thing either, is it? Okay, so those are like some oddball questions, right? Well, I'll explain why I asked those in a moment. So here's the thing when we talk about poverty, especially when we talk about, Valencia mentioned free and reduced lunch and that 130% of the poverty line. Well, what does that mean? So here's a little history on the poverty measure that we use today. It was developed over 50 years ago. Before there was this thing called the internet. It was developed not taking into consideration a lot of things, like say the fact that people who have no, very low income, no income, have very low assets. Oftentimes their only access to short-term credit is a payday loan, which in the state of Tennessee can charge 459% interest. So when we developed this poverty measure, we didn't consider those things. So this is the real and true history of the poverty measure, and it's the same way we calculate it today. So it's actually based on the bare minimum a household can spend on food. In the direct words of the USDA, they base it on what a household, the food plan that a household would use for temporary or emergency use when funds are low. So we set a poverty threshold at this idea that, well, this is the bare minimum you can eat for like a short-term period without starving to death. So they took that number.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, so the poverty measure is actually based on, so they took that number of the, what is it again, the temporary emergency use when funds are low, so that kind of food budget that you would operate under there. They took that number and they multiplied by 3. Because in 1963, they had done some studies and they figured, well, a household would spend about 3 times, their overall expenses would be about 3 times what they spend on food. Of course, today, we all live with the internet. That's another expense that didn't exist 50 years ago. You know, so not only do we have telephones, we've got internet, we've got this, we've got that. And to just keep up in today's society, those are, I mean, internet's a utility now. It's a utility, it's not a luxury, it's a utility. And so,
Cell phone too.
cell phone, yeah. These are necessities of life now. They're not those nice things that you can have if you've got extra money. They're the things you need to exist. And so none of that, and they haven't amended the way they calculate poverty. It's still, they figure out what's the bare minimum that somebody can spend on food and not starve to death, and they multiply it by 30. So that's where we get the poverty measure. It's not based on like actual cost of living. So that's where things, you know, people start talking about living wage. Well, that's actually where you sit down and you budget and you say, okay, well, somebody has to be able to afford their rent, somebody has to be able to buy food, somebody has to have internet and phone, and that's what living wage is. So that's really the bare minimum to live. The poverty measure is just an arbitrary number developed by the government, and it's really, really low. So that was the other question I wanted to ask. So although Valencia kind of gave it away, but you were doing 130%. So what's 100% of poverty for a family of 4? Anybody care to guess?
100% of poverty?
Yeah, so if you're living at the poverty threshold, you got 4 people in your household.
Around 23.
Yeah, so you work in this. So yeah, it's about 20, a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, so it's $24,000 a year for 4 people, 4 mouths to feed, 4 heads to shelter, 4, you know, backs to clothe. Yes.
Give us an hourly rate.
I have to
$10.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Divided by 28.
Next time you're,
yeah.
Walgreens and the clerk or.
Oh yeah.
Take
Oh,
yours
well,
there.
actually,
I know.
yeah, it's something to that effect. Yeah.
Because when we see signs in the community that says, pay $10 an hour, if it's $12 an hour, you're offering people poverty wage.
Oh, exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think the gross annual kind of throws those of us that weren't great in math awful.
Sorry. Yeah. So
All right,
well,
I
I'm
just need it broken
thinking.
down.
I mean, you know, it's like a car. Like, so some people live on less than what people pay for. Even, I mean, like a commuter sedan, not like a fancy car, right? So, but that's what's real. And even in calculating that food plan, I mean, that's arbitrary. It doesn't take into account the fact that, especially in rural areas, rural Tennessee, you pay a lot more for your groceries than what the USDA cooks up for their bare minimum. They're looking at the whole country and they're averaging out those numbers. So there's just a lot of things that go into that measure that make it problematic. The reality is there's a lot more people who struggle than who are, when we talk about the 1 million people in our state who are poor, we're throwing a whole lot of people out who are struggling, who are struggling just as much, sometimes more. I mean, there's a lot more life than what you bring in. I mean, it has a lot to do with what goes out. We are the #1 state for medical debt, and medical debt is the #1 reason for bankruptcy in the nation. So, there's a lot more than what you bring in. It's also about what you send out. So just wanted to frame that up, just to say that, poverty, we talk a lot about poverty. Poverty is kind of how everything gets measured and gauged, but it really is kind of an arbitrary thing that doesn't fully reflect the struggles of our neighbors. So, another piece that I wanted to touch on is, because related to that, and I think, you spoke to it there, with things like the wages and what's being advertised. I mean, the economy has gotten better. I mean, I'm not, the economy is getting better, but it's not working for everybody. Not by a long stretch. We're making this big to-do about what is it, like record low unemployment. Well, the reality is that in most counties in the state, there are still far more unemployed people than there are job opportunities. And even where those jobs are available, I was in Cookeville a few weeks ago at the Cookeville Rescue Mission. and they were talking about how just right across the street from the mission, they were putting in this new, they were gonna hire 400 people in this high-tech, state-of-the-art factory in a year. And I mean, residents said it, staffers said it, it's like, these jobs aren't for our people. Great, we just created 400 jobs, well, the people who need them don't have the skills, may not be able to get the skills they need to work those jobs. So that's the reality. Is, yeah, it's great that we're at near full employment, people who want jobs are getting them and all that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of folks who are still being shut out of the labor market and they're struggling. I think it also, when we make a big to-do about the unemployment rate, it also kind of denies the fact that, so I didn't believe this when I first saw it, but I mean, these are official statistics, this is real, and when you start to look at it, it actually starts to make sense. So 1 in 6 Tennessee workers loses their job every year, and this is like as of last year, so we'll say 1 in 6 last year, lost their jobs through no fault of their own, whether it was the business they were working at closed or they went through a workforce reduction. So again, it's great that, employment's full. I'm sure that a lot of these folks who are losing their jobs, they're finding new jobs, but then you're in that gap, right? So suddenly you've got income, or you have an income and then suddenly you don't. So, and unemployment benefits, by the way, for anybody, the maximum you can draw down is $250 a week for 6 months. So that in the state of Tennessee, yeah. So unemployment benefits are not, and it's not based on the number of people in the household, or the most you can get is $250 a week for up to 6 months. So, if even a minimum wage job pays better than that full time. So the reality is that, again, there's just a lot of folks who are struggling even as we celebrate, an economic recovery and things like that. Another way to look at it too is the fact that, yeah, people are getting back to work, but the wages aren't there. Work doesn't, we're all working as hard as we used to do, but the take-home pay doesn't come out the same. And I was going to say this for later, but it makes sense now, is the fact that if you look at SNAP participation, I was going to save it for later because I wanted to actually explain what SNAP is. But it's kind of our main hunger safety net program. So the number of households in Tennessee who work while on SNAP has actually tripled in the last 15 years. Yeah, and that looks like, I was in McMinnville 3 or 4 months ago at a health clinic, like a mobile health clinic they set up there, and I met this woman who had, she'd actually been working a steady job for 3 years, but she couldn't make ends meet on that job. I mean, she was excited to have a job. They didn't even hire her on actually full, so she worked full time, but she was a temporary, so they hired her on temporary for 3 years. They finally, I met her literally like a month before I met her. She finally got hired on full time, but she was still going to need food stamps, SNAP. And that's the real story of way too many people in our state. These are folks who are working, they're working hard. I mean, she works full time, she's taking care of her kid, but it's just not enough to make ends meet, and so that's where she wound up, was so she continued to use SNAP to fill that gap.
Can you just remind me what SNAP stands for?
Yes, it is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. That's why I was going to save it, because I figured it would get a little confusing. We'll come back to it. And I think another thing, for those who move in certain circles, this is kind of becoming like a cliche sort of thing to say, but automation is real. It's a real thing. Former Commissioner Randy Boyd actually commissioned a study while he was at Economic and Community Development that found that in the next decade, half of the jobs that exist in our state today won't exist. And so that, again, cuts back to this, great, you're working now, you got money coming in, but what happens when it's time to take the job that you had and a robot's going to do it now? Well, robots, you don't get paid for a robot to do your job. And that's what we're staring down the barrel of, is half of the jobs that exist right now will not exist in a decade. So, why am I talking about all this? Well, that's, poverty and the labor market, employment. This is what feeds food insecurity. This is the main thing. I mean, there's a lot of other factors that can contribute, but ultimately it comes down to having the money to go to the store and get the food you need. That's how you maintain, your own food security. And at the end of the day, people got to eat, and that's the problem. And Valencia actually covered kind of the definition and all that, so I won't go into that. But I will say that, and I think I mentioned it earlier, there's a million. A million is kind of the magic number when we talk about these things. So it's 1 million in poverty, it's 1 million who are food insecure, and even in Williamson County. So when you look at child hunger, child food insecurity, I believe it was, and I thought better, but I did think about bringing 7 little baby dolls and just picking one up and just running across the room. Because that's what we're doing, even in Williamson County, which is doing good, relatively good compared to the rest of the state. 1 in 7 of your boys and girls here are growing up hungry. They're growing up not able to focus, not able to learn, developing the halt thing, right? It's hard to grow up and succeed on an empty belly.
So 1 in 7 is food insecure, is that what you're saying?
Children in Williamson County. This story doesn't come from Williamson, it actually comes from just down the road in Murray. There was a kid who was caught stealing ketchup and mustard packets at a school down there, and they confronted him. It's because he didn't have food over the weekend, so he was just trying to do the best they could. Because it's really easy to say, well, there's 1 million people who are food insecure, but that's what it looks like. You're multiplying stories like that 1 million times. Or, when I worked at the Commission on Aging and Disability, the woman she was recently widowed. The neat thing about, relying on Social Security and you're an older couple, when you're on Social Security, you can draw yours and your spouse gets theirs, and then your spouse dies, and you can pick the higher of the two, but you still lose one of those incomes. And so this woman in particular, her husband passed away, and she spent the next several months before she kind of found the services that we provided. She spent the next several months eating nothing but beans, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because that's all she could afford. So, that's when we say that there's 1 million Tennesseans who are food insecure, those are the stories that go with each one of those numbers. And it could be much, much worse. It could be much, much worse, and it can be better. And this is actually where I was going to switch over and talk about SNAP, which is the main program that I focus on in my work, in terms of making sure that it works the best that it can, and it helps people who need it. So again, it is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Most people still know it as food stamps, but we haven't had the coupons in more than 20 years now. And as a quick aside, so it is. It looks like a credit card. I don't know. Well, I'm not gonna get mine out. I'm already this far in. It's the same. It works. It's the same as anybody else. You'd never know it. You truly would not know it if you went in the store. I was talking to a friend of mine a few months ago who does this kind of work too, and we were actually at a restaurant, and we just put our credit cards on the table to pay, and he just, he picks it up and he says, I hate, the cards for SNAP. I was like, I don't know where this is going, I'm kind of freaked out. He said, because I wish that, the resources that are distributed through this program were going through food pantries and soup kitchens, because then we would be forced to see all of the people who need who need this help. Because it's 1 million people. It's in our state, just in Tennessee, SNAP provides $1.7 billion in food assistance every year.
Wow.
And so that's the thing, is right now we've got a really efficient, I wouldn't change it because it's incredibly efficient. We build it on the back of it's the supermarkets that we all shop at. You get your card and you go and you buy groceries just like anybody else. And You know, it adds money into the economy, especially in our rural counties that are struggling. I mean, if we did not have SNAP in Hancock County, there wouldn't be grocery stores in Hancock County. You know, so it's important in that way. It's the efficient way to do it, but it hides hunger, right? You know, it allows people, and for the people who participate, it's good because it does, you know, it reduces some of that stigma, but it hides the importance of the program and the incredible impact it has on the, you know, again, that magic number, 1 million, it's about 1.1 million people, or 1 in 6 Tennesseans actually receives SNAP benefits. And, you know, to give you a picture, well, okay, so 1 million people get it. Nearly half of those people are children that are our kids, our neighbors. So you take that, you got half. And then layer on top of that, older adults and adults with disabilities. And that's not just people who are like permanently disabled. You know, we worked with a client in Nashville who had, she was in a really bad car wreck and she couldn't work. I mean, she just could not work. And so SNAP was there, you know, that helped her make ends meet as she recovered. You know, she's getting back into employment now, but it carried her through that. So you got half your program's kids, a third of your program is, yeah, older adults, you know, people who are, you know, beyond retirement age, who are not, you know, and God knows, we see them trying to work sometimes, but for a lot of these folks, it's just not an option. And people with disabilities, whether it's permanent disabilities or temporary. So you just look at that, and pretty much there's hardly anybody left on the program. But even of just the working age adults, they are working. You know, I mentioned earlier, the number of households on the program working has tripled in 15 years. You know, so that's what it is. And it's not a permanent program. I think that's another misconception that gets carried around. I mean, people are on the program and they come off the program. We've seen it just from the recession. So, you know, participation peaked and it's actually gone down. Almost 300,000 Tennesseans have come off the program just in the last, I guess, 5 years now. So, you know, the economy is improving. SNAP is there for them when times are bad, and now they're coming off. You know, if the economy continues to improve, SNAP will shrink, which is really, I mean, I wish nobody needed SNAP, but I'm thankful it's there. And I did want to highlight this because, you know, and Valencia mentioned, you know, kind of spoke to this as well, you know, some of the shame and feeling shut out. So I actually looked up the poverty numbers for Williamson County and SNAP participation. And so I can tell you that less than half of people who are eligible in this county for SNAP actually participate.
Wow, that's enough.
Less than half participate. And I can all but guarantee that a good chunk of that is just the stigma of, you know, having to go to the Department of Human Services office and apply, and of being afraid that somebody might figure out that your credit card is the one that came from the government instead of from your bank. And it's heartbreaking because, you know, these are resources that are there. You don't get the assistance if you're not eligible. It's not like you just show up and they give it to you, or you have to, I mean, it's based on your income, it's based on some of your expenses. It's math, it's not, yeah.
I think so. Is that based on that 24 or 23,000 for a family of 4 number? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so, I mean, to qualify, and I apologize, I've used a lot of numbers because I'm like a numbers guy, but yeah, so basically the way it works, it's a little complicated how they calculate it, but ultimately that household income would have to be below that 24,000.
So even when they come off the program, there's still probably need for food.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, that's where, you know, I say I'm here to protect and improve. I mean, there's things that the state of Tennessee could be doing that would actually kind of ease that. Because as another aside, and this doesn't come from Tennessee, this is actually from my time in Penobscot Nation in Maine. I actually lived with a family off the reservation. It was a mother and 4 kids. It was actually very reminiscent of my own childhood in a lot of ways. And I remember she got a 50-cent an hour raise at work. And she was really, I mean, she would have done anything to get her family out of the situation they were in. Because she was having to use all the safety net programs. So she got a 50-cent an hour raise at work, and that was going to eliminate her $500 a month in childcare assistance. That was going to, cut back significantly her food stamp benefits. She wasn't going to lose them yet. But that's the other side to that, is not only do people need it after they go over those thresholds, but it really does. It's an impossible calculus. So these programs can be better, but we need to make sure that when we're changing these policies that we're making them better and we're not making them less. Because unfortunately, a lot of people, they use words like reform to mean we're going to make it less. We're going to take away from this program. And that doesn't help anybody get out of poverty. That's not the solution. The solution is, and having been a bureaucrat and, set policies for programs, we need to make them work better. Nobody wants anybody to live in poverty. Yeah, and I did think it was worth just kind of, the charities across our state are incredibly important, and they're filling a vital gap. And that's another way to look at the SNAP program that I just wanted to highlight. So if you look at SNAP, if you take the benefits that it serves and you turn that into meals using kind of the second harvest calculations, SNAP provides over 500 million meals to Tennessee residents. So that's 500 million meals that our charities don't have to worry about providing. Another way to look at it is, so I did the math on this, and then I called my mom. So because she goes to a small church on the Kentucky line, Fairfield, or she used to go there. She moved to the city and found a nice urban United Methodist church, relatively speaking. So I did the math on this. So if we decided we're just going to get rid of the SNAP program and we're going to make that, we're going to just turn it back over to, charitable response, and we'll just raise the money. The bill for every church in the state would be $140,000 a year. So every church in the state would be responsible for raising $140,000 extra dollars a year. So I called my mom, because I thought, well, she goes to a church in Tennessee, a small church. I asked her, what was the budget at that church? And she said $70,000 a year. So, and that's the reality for a lot, when we sorry, yeah.
Can you clarify that?
Yeah.
When you say $140,000 a year, that is to fill the stamp on the flag.
Yeah, if there was no SNAP program, it'd be $140,000 a year. Yeah.
Per church.
Per church.
I can only imagine how many churches are.
Yeah, I forget the number.
It's
It's
okay.
a lot.
We're in
It's like
Tennessee.
12,000. Yeah, there's like
Yeah.
12,000 churches or something, and most of them look like the church that my mom went to. They're these country churches that have maybe 100, 200 congregants that themselves are probably on SNAP. And so that's really where okay, so they've got a budget of $70,000, so they're going to go out and triple that just to feed people when they're barely making ends meet themselves. I was going to talk a little about breakfast, but so we have a lot of school nutrition program. I mean, we've got a robust safety net. It's more than just SNAP. Valencia mentioned quite a bit those free and reduced meals. So even here in Williamson County, there's a lot of kids that benefit from that. It's an incredibly important safety net. It makes sure, those programs make sure that our kids can learn and grow and become productive citizens. And so, I'm being shown the time there. So I'll wrap it up. I did want to say, I mean, So this is probably gonna fall on its face, and I should have done it the other way, but I'm gonna try anyway. So, I mean, I kind of saved for the end my own story. The reality is kind of like Jay over there. I mean, I did not grow up hungry, but I was born to a teenage mom who chose life. And then she struggled for the rest of my childhood and my siblings' childhood to support that life, those lives. And I can say that from my own experience of alcoholism and abuse and the choices that she had to make that work, that's why we need these safety net programs, and that's why we need the work of Valencia. Like, we need these programs because the reality is we have an economy where my mom worked hard her whole life. I remember one time she told me she worked on a road project for a big firm downtown. She was the secretary to 6 engineers. And she was telling me all she did on this project. I was like, well, what did the engineers do? And it sounded like they basically just showed up and got their paycheck, honestly. And yet, for some reason, these 6 engineers made, 5 times what she made. And that was the experience that I had growing up with my mom was straight. She was doing everything she could, so she got married, not very nice people. That's why we need these safety net programs, because you take them away, it puts people in those desperate situations. Because that was the thing in our families, we're not going to grow up on welfare. Great. So I got the other stuff instead. And so I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know what else we can do but to keep some kind of safety net going. And so that's why I'm here. Yeah, I think questions. Yeah.
Thank
I'm
you.
supposed to go over here now. Yeah.
If we-
that a hot seat?
Yeah, it's a hot seat.
Yeah.
If you just have like 5 minutes, you can ask more questions, yes.
Here we
just have
go.
them come up here.
Um,
Thank you.
Keith, can you talk briefly about Representative Diane Black, who's running for governor, and her budget proposal cuts to food nutrition programs?
Yes, so, the budget resolution that was kind of released just before the congressional recess, unfortunately, I think, made some interesting choices about how we want to invest in our country. The decision through that budget resolution, or the vision that it painted, was one in which we would disinvest in our social programs like SNAP. Specifically, it called for $10 billion in cuts over 10 years to the SNAP program, as well as, sort of making a statement about cuts in future budgets even deeper, in order to increase defense spending, which is certainly important, but we actually already are at all-time high levels of defense spending, so we're going to put more money into that when we have people who are still struggling to make ends meet. So that's kind of how that went.
How much does SNAP cost per year in Tennessee?
So is the question about what does it cost? Like,
Well, not cost,
state-
but what is that federal? dollar in
It's about
Tennessee?
1 point, so it's been coming, because it's based on who
Right.
participates, but it's,
Right.
last year is $1.7 billion in assistance.
1.7 billion just for Tennessee in assistance, and she wants to cut it by 10 billion for the country.
For the country, so it's, nationally, it's about $66 billion a year, so. But it's the fact, but the issue with any cuts to the SNAP program is that it is an incredibly efficient, effective program.
Right.
So there's no way to take money out of it without either reducing assistance for everyone or just completely knocking certain groups, certain people out of the program, like raising the eligibility requirements. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a statement, just included in this poverty is the medical field. I work in that field, and I see people turned away because their bill is $500 and they haven't paid on it. I see people turned away who are on TennCare. Sorry, but we only take one TennCare patient a month or something like that, And I send people to Mercy. I don't know where else to send them, but that's where I send them here in Franklin. It just breaks my heart, and I listen to some of my coworkers, that these people deal with a stigma too, because of that, you know, so
Yeah.
anyway.
And it's expensive, you know, GraceWorks, we are able to help some, but when I say help, I mean, we can't give thousands of dollars to
No,
one person, we just,
yeah.
we're
But
a
if you have-
nonprofit, we don't have the
plenty
budget
of
for
money,
it.
or you have a job that provides you health insurance, you're okay.
Yeah.
You know, you can afford all the tests
Mhm.
that are necessary sometimes.
To discover what's wrong with you, that's why a lot of people have
For you to
advanced
live at
diseases,
work.
they can't discover.
Yeah,
Yeah, by the time, I mean, you know, their health has so declined by the time they get there, because they
That's
can't
right.
afford the test to catch it early. I- Yeah, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge one of my bosses here, Kevin Riggs, he's on the board of GraceWorks. So, thank you, Kevin, and erase all the stuff about me.
Does anybody else have a question? Yes.
There's an immovable object running into an immovable force. That's that object. You know, since 2011 to today, our national debt has grown from about $13 trillion, and at the end of the fiscal year, it's supposed to be 20.4. That's about $800 billion to $900 billion every year in the debt that we all owe. And that's not counting corporate debt, and that's not counting personal debt. That's just what the government throws on our shoulders. But we don't accept it. We don't think it's there. And I'm not speaking any way, shape, or form against what we do next. But somewhere along the way, we have to address this on a far more global level. Something has to give. We're all in deep when a head of lettuce costs $12.60 of inflation. We'll all be under poverty then.
We will be.
Somewhere along the way, we have to address that issue. I'm not suggesting a solution because I don't have one. I don't know if there is, to be quite honest with you. It scares me.
So then what would you keep as someone who is invested in propping up these social programs? What would you say as a millennial, I'm concerned about the national debt as well, but what would you say in response to that?
Well, one thing I say about SNAP, you know, another piece about that program is that, and you spoke to it, and actually, I was going to share, when I was at Community Food Advocates, so we actually did SNAP outreach, and I had a gentleman who was here in Williamson County, lived in Brentwood, and he called me up. He was, I believe he said he was like 66, 67. He had just come out of the hospital. Apparently hadn't been eating much lately, and a friend of his found out and told him to call us. And I just remember what he said to me. So I kind of walked him through. I was like, okay, well, this is how you apply, and you know, if you have any trouble, we'll help you and all that. And as we were about to hang up, he just stopped and he said, you know, I used to be a rich banker, and now I'm just a poor old man.
Wow.
And so I think the first thing I would say is that nobody ever canceled their life insurance policy because they didn't die. Because I think there's a temptation to balance the budget on programs like SNAP because well, I'm not on SNAP right now. But the reality is that's our safety net is just that. You know, people try to present it as something else. The reality is your safety net is the furthest you can fall. And so we need to ask ourselves as a nation, how far are we willing to let our neighbors fall? How far are we willing to allow ourselves to fall? So I don't envy anybody who has a balanced budget, but I can tell you that I wouldn't, and in my own budgeting, I mean, that's been my rule. I've been broke. And my number one rule is I'm gonna eat, you know, like, and I feel like that our national priorities should be the same. You know, people gotta eat, and we need to invest in that. Now, how we balance that, great question. But I don't think it's wise to balance the budget on people's stomachs.
I'm going to one of your, thank you. Okay, I just want to understand, the slide that shows the farmers, 150 million per year support to Tennessee farmers.
Yes.
And I'm looking at the darkest green areas, and I can't read this very well, but I'm gonna say that, so this is sort of one of those where, you know, we always talk about an economy, and a market economy, and farmers are part of the market economy. They have a skill, and they have an output, and so it's not like we're shipping this food in from another country to support our folks. So are we actually growing the food here in Tennessee that somewhat supports, or?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to understand how we are all kind of tied together. And I have a friend who is a somewhat retired football coach and very successful in West Tennessee. And he said, you know, I've been called to a county nearby. I'm going to travel there 45 minutes to work with a junior high school in this county, and it's going to be great. I'm fired up. But 60% of these kids are on food stamps, and it's summer. And these boys are like living in, some of them, neighborhoods that aren't safe, where there's lots of temptation. The drug situation in West Tennessee is apparently really bad, which I ignorantly did not know. And he's trying to figure out how he's going to feed them so they'll come to football practice. He feeds them because they come to practice. So he's looking at his neighbors in all these western Tennessee counties who are farmers. So if we pull benefits, are we pulling their incomes as well?
So, and actually just a quick history lesson. So the food stamp program, which is now SNAP, I mean, yes, it's a wonderful thing that feeds people, but that ain't what got it through Congress. The reality is, if you jump in the Wayback Machine, even into the 50s, you had farmers who were at the mercy of markets. And so when, you know, let's say the unemployment rate goes up and we enter a recession, well, that's people who can't afford to eat anymore. And so the farmers felt it too. So, you know, we developed the SNAP program, the food stamp program, in part to smooth out some of that market. So again, you know, farmers know that they're going to be able to sell their products, because whether people are able to purchase the food, you know, with their own income, or whether they use SNAP, that there's a market. And so that's where those numbers came from. So basically I took, the USDA does this thing called the food dollar, and so it breaks out how much farmers make off of that dollar, multiply that out, and that's kind of based on how much food production each of the counties in Tennessee does in their share of the national piece of the pie. So yeah, it's $150 million across the state,
I mean,
but
farmers
particularly.
are not extravagant folks. $150 million in this
That's
state
a lot
for
of
the
money.
farm community, I would think would be tremendous.
So that's where, you know, when we start talking about taking money out of the program, we're talking about, you know, we're getting, you know, we're taking away grocery jobs, we're hurting, you know, local businesses, we're hurting the farmers in our communities. It's more than just hungry people. It really is, it's a wonderful thing in the efficiency that it's achieved and the way that we've integrated it into our economy. And so that's why it is such an important program.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna have time for one more question, and then we're gonna wrap it up so everyone can get back to their days. Thank you. Okay, Anne.
Okay, so I know we talk about how massive the program is and how much it costs and everything, but on the individual level, how long can you draw benefits, and about how much are they? So what is this actually looking like?
I mean, how long you can draw, depending on who you are. So most people who come on the program, I mean, you could, in theory, be on forever. I mean, it's based on what your income, you know, what your economic circumstances are. So when your economic circumstances improve, you come off the program. And most people do. I mean, most people are off within a year. But then you look at, well, let's say you've got a senior who's living on $800 a month Social Security. Well, they're probably going to be on for the rest of their life. So it's kind of hard to, you know, tease that out. But in general, people are off within about a year. Now benefits, yeah, I should have mentioned that, so they're meager, they're very meager. I mean, they help, and it helps a lot of people put food on the table, but they're not, that's why Grace Works and organizations like it are really, really important, because they don't meet all the needs. So the one I know definitely on the top of my head, so just a household of one, so let's say you got that senior and due to her economic circumstances, she gets the full benefit amount, or he. $196 a month is the absolute most you can get, but most people don't get the maximum benefit. I mean, most people, like, I think the average senior gets $108 a month. You know, for families, the average benefit in Tennessee is like $230 a month, so, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to thank you all for coming. This has been incredibly informative, and I most especially want to thank you, Valencia, for coming here and sharing your story with Keith. Just sharing the good work that you both do for these amazing organizations, and especially here in Williamson County. Just the love that comes out of this community that is poured into Grace Works is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful thing. And thank you for encouraging us and to do more, because we've got to do more, and we've got to know more. I believe that the more we know about the needs for mercy in our community, the more we will show up to stand in the gap with you. So thank you all for coming. Sorry we ran over a little late, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so about 6,000 people in Williamson County that are probably good. I mean, I know that second part of this has staff. Where do you live here?
I don't know which one. I live across the street from hospital.
All four of our aldermen were elected, all counties. Mine is 2 Last one.
about the gold. What if there, and you all may have this, if there was a way, cards, gift cards, that they could give out to high school kids who have cars who could go to restaurants, it'd be less like,
Yeah, but you look at the burden for us, we're spending $10. Right? And you think about it, that gift card's got to be worth something, so financially.
Feeling the squeeze as
But-
well.
wait a minute, this costs $10 now.
Right. So now we're talking about a gift card and it's significant value to make a difference.
But I guess I was going to say that they're not, these high school kids are not going to take this field class.
Right.
So
So you're understanding that what we want is $10. So to give a kid a gift card for $10 is not
No, it's not.
impact. I thought that value of the these boys, or maybe that's a new program in the fundraising. Which makes it
Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
different.
Are you saying, no, no, are you saying that our bill back is $10?
That's what we should.
Franklin, Kentucky till I was 9 and then
Already for us.
top quarter.
Yeah. No, and I'm not, you know what, absolutely would be a new program, but I get
But
that.
I like that.
Well, I'm trying to figure out the way to get.
Yeah. Does anybody want anything before I take
No,
this away?
appreciate it. Good luck.
Gift to somebody.
I'm not talking about the food. Because you're the second person I'm talking about the food. I'm not offering this, I'm taking it back and putting it in the whole. Okay, now I'm gonna say, does anybody want to hear this?
I don't know what to ask you, because there's so many, questions, and I've been around here for a long time. Grace Works has helped so many people I know. I mean, after the 2010 flood,
Oh, is that right? I wasn't here then, but I hear a lot about it. Well, the county continues to grow, and I
Attorney, I think you were saying
Let me give you my card.
yeah, let me keep it.
You mentioned Sears.
well, right now, I'm going to say. But I've been
I don't think she's got one, but yeah. How are you? Good to see you. There's a
What, yes. That they like? Yeah. Oh, I know. That's kind of fun though. But that too is, the fundraising the